other source, we are Ama La Vida. We are a life, health and wellness, leadership, and career coaching company. And my name is Justice, and I am a relationship strategist and the sales manager here on the team. And what that means is when you schedule a conversation to have a complimentary consultation, you will end up on either my or one of my teammates' calendars, and we'll have a half-hour call where we will dive deeper into what led you to schedule the call, your current situations, your goals, and then our jobs are to pair you up with the most appropriate coach on our team that would be able to best assist you, given their backgrounds, their personalities, and the skill set that they have to be able to assist their clients. So with all that being said, if anyone has anything top of mind that they would like to talk about, I will go ahead and drop the link to my calendar, and you can go ahead and schedule that. And it is from first come, first serve, and anybody coming to us from a webinar gets their first session free. So something to consider when you're considering budgeting and things of that nature. So go ahead and hop onto my calendar. But with all of that being said, today we have coaches Laura, David, and Hayley with us, and we are going to have a great conversation today. If you guys each want to dive a little bit more into how you specifically can serve your leadership clients, just so the listeners can get a better sense for you and your style. Whoever would like to go first.
I'll jump in and go first again. Well, I'm a leadership and career coach here at Ama La Vida. I particularly love leadership. I've been in corporate for a very long time. And so I love working with new leaders, women leaders, those that are building teams, really communication styles, and helping you show up and be the best leader that you can be. So that's what I really enjoy working with my clients on.
I'll go next. David Molotsky, and I am also a leadership and career coach here at Ama La Vida. And like Kelly, I come from the corporate world. I have about 25 years experience in human resources and love the partnership between the coach and the coachee, really driving into how you want to grow in your career or how you want to grow as a leader or grow other people as a leader. I'm a huge fan of working on talent development and talent management. Both Hayley and I are certified in emotional intelligence. So you see emotional intelligence sneak up in our work all the time. So if you want to learn more about that, reach out to Justice.
Thank you both. And I'm, as I mentioned earlier, Coach Laura. Once again, I'm an executive leadership coach here at Ama La Vida. What my favorite portion of helping my clients do is become the best leader that all the employees want to work for. So I do that by helping them develop the leadership skills to be able to help not only themselves feel less stressed from their roles, but also to be able to develop that talent piece that David was just speaking of, so that when they want to be promoted, they have somebody ready to fill their shoes.
Thank you all for the quick little introduction. And I'm also going to drop the link to our website where you can see all of their biographies to learn a little bit more about them, as well as some of the other leadership coaches that we do have on the team. But with all that being said, I am going to go ahead and hand this over to you guys, and you guys can go ahead and start us off the webinar. Thank you all so much for being here today.
Thank you, Justice. So I'll go ahead and get us kicked off here. Welcome everyone to this webinar. The reason that we're doing this in a little bit of a different format is because we'd like to do a panel discussion. And as David mentioned earlier, both David and Hayley are certified in the emotional intelligence. And what we're talking about today regarding how to grow confident and humble leaders really falls very well in this realm. So it was decided that this type of format would be the best way to be able to help you gain as much insight and skills through this conversation as we can possibly pack into about a 45, maybe 50-minute session. What I will ask is, as questions come up, I'm going to be monitoring the chat. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll ask them. We'll try to answer the different questions right on the spot. However, at the end, we also have time to do some question and answer as well. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. I'll start by saying part of the agenda of today was going to be to cover how to identify your next potential leader and how to develop those individuals, how to use confidence as an advantage as opposed to a detriment, And then ideas on how you're going to be able to incorporate this and some tactics to put this in place. So with that, I'm going to just talk slightly about ideas on the characteristics. So I'm going to first ask Hayley, how do you feel that individuals can identify the characteristics of that next leader?
That's a very good question. I think when you're looking at your employees and your direct reports, really when you have those one-on-one conversations, those one-on-one meetings that you have with them, really getting to know them in that meeting about what their career goals are, what is their career plan, and make sure that it's clear and attainable. And that will help you be able to see what characteristics, what are they driving for, what are they reaching for, and then you're able to then be able to provide tips to help them develop. And also too, looking at your team, who's stepping up when projects come up, when you need extra assistance is needed, what team members are willing to go above and beyond without necessarily having to be asked, but stepping up to the plate. And also those that express their desires, that want to develop their skills, is really important as well.
Terrific. Thank you. And I'm just curious, from your experience, how frequently do you recommend conducting these one-on-one meetings specific to the development piece?
Typically, a lot of my clients, they do have the weekly one-on-one meetings with their managers. And I tell them it's a great idea to devote one of those weekly one-on-one meetings just around career development and career goals, and focus that and let your manager know, like speak up and tell them, hey, I'd love to take, or even half of one of the sessions or half of one of our meetings to talk about my goals and help me stay on track. And that way, if we do that at least once a month in one of our one-on-ones, I'm making sure that I'm staying on track, and you can have your manager support to help you with that along the way.
That's great. Thank you, Hayley. I appreciate that. Now, you hit on a topic there that I want to ask David about. You said that the employee should take it upon themselves to be able to mention this. What kind of interpersonal skills do you feel that the employee needs to learn in order to have this conversation with their manager, David?
Thanks a lot, Laura. And Haley, I totally agree on the one-on-ones. And I do believe that employees should be driving the one-on-ones. I've talked to many people who think that the manager should be driving the one-on-ones. I do feel the employee owes it to themselves, whether it's about the business or about their own professional development. And to your point, Laura, it's good to have some sense of confidence, which I know we're going to talk about later, but it's also good if you're striving to be a leader or a future leader, that you show some sense of emotional intelligence that we talked about before. So it's really awareness of what you bring to the table. What are you doing with that awareness? Awareness of others. And then what do you do with the total package? That's sort of my nutshell version of emotional intelligence. It's a lot more, it's a bit more complex than that. With that, a good example would be how you handle a conflict. How do you handle yourself in diversity situations and inclusion situations? Heck, how do you handle yourself in this hybrid work situation that we're in thanks to the pandemic and some of the evolving policies of the companies? It's a hunger to really be more than where you are now.
I love that. It's a hunger to be able to be more than where you are now. Now, are there any specific ways that you would encourage an individual to be able to demonstrate this hunger to their manager?
I think it's the initiative that Haley spoke of. Are you taking leadership responsibilities on projects? It doesn't necessarily have to just be people management, although if you can lead a team, that's fantastic. But are you leading projects? Are you leading projects that actually cross from your team to other teams? The ability to influence without necessarily having the authority is one of the key leadership qualities that even C-suite leaders try to have regardless of their title. So just take the initiative.
Terrific. Thank you. I am going to ask the participants if you could put into chat one, if you are a leader that's looking to develop the next leader, or a two, if you are the person who's looking to be developed. Because I am just curious to see what the balance is of the audience we have here today. So far, I'm seeing almost everybody coming in as once or both. That's great, Joanna. Thank you. That's what a wonderful piece of information there, because we should be both, right? So even though while I'm looking at my staff and how to be able to bring them up, I also need to be doing these same things with my manager so that I can take that next step. Any recommendations from either you, David, or Haley on how I may be able to demonstrate this upwards to my manager that I want to take that next step?
David brought out a really good point that I want to go back to that was really good about getting involved in projects, not just on your team, but projects on other teams. That's really important, because not only are you networking with others in the company, so your name is getting out there. A lot of employees want to manage up. They want to be able to build their network, be known as a thought leader in their organization. And by doing that, by working with other teams on other projects, or being able to be that SME, maybe from your area for a project they're working on, or just being able to join that team or join that project to learn yourself. And maybe it's not doing a big piece of the work, but just being involved and being able to be in that environment is so important for growing and learning as well, and developing those traits. And your manager's going to see that, because if you're interacting with others, they're going to talk about you. Your name's going to get out there, and it's going to get back to your manager, and they're going to know that you're stepping up.
Absolutely love that.
Step up is to be a mentor to other people on a team. If your team is continually getting new people, offering to be a trainer, some sort of additional, it's almost an assistant to the manager in some ways, but it shows a level of initiative on your part. And it, by the way, gets you to practice some people skills.
Love that. Love that advice. And actually, that segues next into the how to use confidence as an advantage piece. What I'm just curious about here is, as we've been talking through this, there's been a statistic that I recently read. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got it on my second screen here. I want to read it to you and just see where both of you feel. So this was Cone Communications did a study on millennial employee engagement, reported that they discovered 75% of millennials would take a pay cut to work for a more socially responsible company, and that members of the Gen Z, the newest generation entering our workforce, they value diversity when choosing a workplace. So I realize that this kind of talks about a couple of different items: social responsibility, diversity, inclusion, and how that all comes to play when we're talking about being an authentic leader and having that confidence, that humble confidence. Let me ask you, Hayley, what do you feel it takes, as we were just talking about that presence, that executive presence piece? What does it take in order to show up confidently in that arena?
I love that question, Laura, because really confidence and courage, and we've talked about this just off in our own personal discussions about how confidence and courage really go hand in hand. Because when we're courageous, when we're bold, when we feel that in ourselves, it's going to boost us. Others are going to notice. We're going to notice it in ourselves. David mentioned earlier about emotional intelligence and being that self-awareness. So when we're self-aware of how we're feeling, others are going to notice. And then also too, when we notice that in others, we're going to bring that out. We're going to notice our coworker. We may say, "Oh, wow, you really led that meeting with confidence. I could just feel it coming off of you." That's going to make them feel good, and you feel good as well. And also stepping outside of your comfort zone. Any of my clients, most people know me, that I say, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's when you know you're allowing yourself that space to grow, and you are growing. Because if you're always in the norm, or you're just doing what's comfortable for you, you're not allowing yourself to grow, and you're not able to expand and build in your confidence. Something else I love to share is about, you mentioned yourself, being authentic and being genuine and showing up as your best self. And truly, when leaders are authentic and genuine, their team members are going to go the extra mile for them. There's a quote by Maya Angelou that we use a lot in emotional intelligence about people not remember what you did, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. So when you're authentic and when you're genuine and you show up as your best self, not how you think others want you to be, but how you genuinely feel, you're going to feel confident, and it's going to show. And then you're going to be able to advocate for yourself, share your accomplishments with others, let other people know what you're doing. So you don't do it in a braggy way, but you do it in a way that's supportive and helpful.
That's fabulous. Thank you. And that's you've hit on the crux of some of the challenge. Many people see confidence as being, as you said, bragging, or, I'm coming into the room and I'm taking over the entire conversation. I'm dominating the process. And that's how they envision the confidence. David, what ideas do you have to help individuals be able to demonstrate this confidence in a way that would ensure others aren't being put off by it?
I think that's an interesting question, because I think some people actually associate showing their confidence only with people who are extroverted. And I used to laugh at that, because I'm an extreme introvert. And I used to say, wait, we matter too. And you have leaders like Eleanor Roosevelt or Bill Gates, believe it, and Elon Musk, and even Lady Gaga, who's a leader in the music field, all identify as extreme introverts. So I think the way it really can show up is kind of interesting. There's a lot of correlation between that leadership and other leadership characteristics. So some of the qualities could be being a champion. Are you really championing other ideas, other people on the team? Do you have the courage to change yourself? Do you have the willingness to change? A lot of times we say, oh, I hear you and I'm going to make the change, but we don't necessarily have the willingness to follow through and take action. So are you really driving that in yourself and other people? And it is a matter of some level of energy and some level of enthusiasm. As I just mentioned, though, that's going to come out differently in different people. There's a comment in the chat that talks about generational differences. And there's a number of factors that come out differently among the generations and different cultures. So you have to be aware when you are driving change or you're demonstrating change, that you're aware of different people's contributions and different people's backgrounds. It really is a way to inspire across, and your ability to be part of the group as an individual and as a team member.
Now, that is a great way to be able to help individuals understand that confidence it really is about being authentic to who you are. I do see one item in chat that I just want to get some of your insights on. The Johanna, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think I get stuck when team members interpret humility with incompetency. I want to be comfortable saying that I don't know the answer, or to give me time to figure it out, but there's feeling that it's taken a different way by the people who report to me. So are there ways that you could, either Hayley or David, that you would suggest being able to show humility and being humble and being authentic? I don't know the answer, and yet still being able to show that they should have confidence in your ability to get it done or to be able to come back. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I saw in the chat, maybe I didn't, but I think I saw somewhere where someone said they wanted to be comfortable being able to, for instance, if you're in a meeting and someone asks a question, and so you may not know the answer, so you may think, if I don't say anything, they're going to view me as not knowing the answer or being incompetent. But that simple, let me get back to you, let me do some research. That's a really good way of not saying I'm incompetent or I don't know, but let me go figure it out. Another tip is asking questions. A lot of times, if we don't know anything, or maybe we do know, sometimes we may be in a meeting, we may know the answer to everything they're talking about. And we may think to ourselves, well, I don't want to talk too much, or I don't want to share all of my knowledge, because then I'll be seen as a know-it-all, and they won't think I'm humble. But you can share your knowledge and also ask questions of others to get their thoughts. I had this thought, but also, what do you think about that, Thomas? Or what do you think about that, Cindy? Or what do you think about that, Bill? I'd love to get your thoughts on it. So you're not only being inclusive and including ideas of others, but you're sharing. So it's not seen as the I show, the person that's speaking.
I could see that being very powerful. David, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that humility, like our comment earlier, is also something that is a strong element in multiple cultures where they teach gender humility or they teach age humility. So several coachees are struggling with, how do I show up, still be humble, be my authentic self, and really show some sense of confidence because I want to be a leader. And Hayley, I fully agree with your suggestions on how to be there. Also ask for feedback. What are the behaviors that people are wanting to see? So it's not just, hey, am I demonstrating feedback? Solicit feedback from others and create some growth opportunities. And if you really struggle to do that in front of a large group, pick somebody that you feel confident in, somebody that you have a trusting relationship, and try to explore how you could show up as a leader in that situation or show up with some of the behaviors that we discussed.
You just triggered a thought I had, and I just would love to hear your feedback on this. I know many of us, we're in this hybrid, or we may be doing the majority of our work via Zoom. And when we're in a group and sitting around the boardroom table, sometimes it's a little easier to speak up because you can read the body language a little better. You can read the room, so to speak. David or Hayley, what do you think? Are there ways to be able to show up confidently, asking these questions that in the scenario where you're not quite sure what the answers may be in a Zoom type setting? Any recommendations on how to handle that piece?
Hayley, can I take this one?
Go for it.
Okay. So one of the comments that you made is one of the ways to show up and show confidence and show leadership, and that's be on camera. Many people, and I certainly have been on Zoom and have seen that, want to turn the camera off because, quite honestly, they're either multitasking, something's going wrong, they're afraid of the background, whatever the issues are. Just showing up and being able to make that contact with others is really a good way to show confidence. Participating in the chats, kudos to those people who are participating in the chats, is a great way if public speaking is not your style or you're really uncomfortable with speaking up in the group. You can speak up in the chat. And it's also not always about that meeting. If you know what the meeting agenda is, contact the leader of the meeting, get your points across, or follow up after the meeting so that you're still showing up, but you're showing up in a way that's, as Hayley said, authentic to you.
I love that advice. Thank you so much. And I know it's challenging right now to be in this unique scenario. However, you can still be able to identify leaders and be identified as a leader in Zoom just by the way that you show up. So wonderful. Thank you. And David, I was curious, do you have any input regarding how, as we help the future leaders show up, how, or some, and maybe I should say some warnings to them about how confidence could possibly hurt their situation. And in that case, it might be overconfidence could hurt their situation.
It's a great question. When you look at the statistics, usually it's underconfidence. Is that even a word? Or lack of confidence. Maybe that's it, is really the common issue, but there are certainly those that are overconfident, or the way their confidence shows up is hyper ambitious or hyper aggressive, and they come off as arrogant. So it can be, the overconfident is very risky. It also, I think, and Hayley, I'm curious what you think about this. It also can affect relationships because overconfidence can be seen as a little bit overbearing. So it could affect trust in a relationship. And again, if we think about cultural diversity, it certainly can be seen differently across cultures. So I think you have to be very mindful how you balance it. Do see some sense of confidence showing up differently across the age groups as well. So with people being very in the more recent generations being very hungry for change. I've been with the company for 3 weeks. I'm ready to be VP. So you have to be very vigilant in balancing your hunger, as we talked about earlier, with some sense of humility. Hayley, do you agree?
Yes, I totally agree with you, David. When you said about trust is really important because I've found and seen, from my experiences and also from the experiences my clients share, that when you have a person that's so overconfident, usually that person is not going to be susceptible to hearing feedback. And we all need feedback to grow in our careers. Constructive feedback and also positive feedback helps us become better people. And so if we're so overconfident that we know everything and nobody can tell us anything, then we're stifling our growth. And then people are not going to trust you because they're going to feel like you're always out for yourself and you're putting yourself first. You don't care about anybody else or the team. It's only that person. So that overconfidence can actually lead to turning people away or turning people off from you. And again, with emotional intelligence, if you are self-aware, you're going to be aware enough of yourself to see how you're coming across to other people, to see if you are coming out as being overconfident. And again, the feedback that you've received from others can let you know that. And asking, if you have people that are close to you that you trust, ask them, how am I coming across? That's a great question to learn, because sometimes we don't know. We may think in our minds we're coming across in a certain way, but it's actually the opposite. So if we don't ask for that feedback, we'll never know. So having that dialogue with someone you trust too is a really good way to make sure you're keeping that overconfidence in check.
Good point.
Very good. Yes. So what I'm hearing is a lot of being authentic, but also asking questions and being willing to ask for feedback. There is one question in chat that I want to just get your input on. It says, are there any tips for bridging the difference in generations to build better leaders? I'm also Gen X, and I want to work with leaders who are younger than I am. What advice do you have on specifically the generations and being able to build the trust so that there can be confidence in their abilities and be able to determine who's going to be the future leader when it comes to cross-generational conversations?
It's a really good question. And I think actually the answer applies to any generation. And that's as a leader or as a colleague, asking what is important to you? What sort of communication style is important to you? What sort of work environment is important to you? It's really so that you're focusing more on the audience than you are on, well, this is what I need as a leader. This is what I need as your colleague. It's really making sure that you're focused on the other person. And then, by the way, flexing as a leader to show that you can meet them where they are, as opposed to always having them meet you where you are. Now, of course, there are dynamics that doesn't always work, but just showing that interest, it also builds trust that Hayley was talking about, that you really are caring as a colleague or as a leader.
I love that, David, of meeting people where they are. And that's really, really big. And another one is you brought up, and I say communication is so important in helping that, because when you communicate, then you're able to know, like you said, what is important to that person. And you can work together better rather than assuming or thinking, oh, they're older, so they may think this way, or they're younger, so it may not be as important to them. Don't assume, communicate and ask questions, and then you can work together better.
Terrific. Thank you. And so basically, what I'm hearing here as a summary is there is no such thing as over communicating.
For sure.
Okay. So now that we've identified a little bit about how that individual is going to either show up that they want to be a future leader, or how I can show up to show others that I want to be a future leader, doing it by taking initiative, having conversations, expressing a desire. And then we talked about the confidence piece. One item I will share with the group is 2 weeks ago, I believe, we did a webinar on how to show up as an executive, a leader, and have executive presence. Specifically, it's called gravitas. So there will be a link that will be shared with you in order to see that webinar on our YouTube page. But that was about the confidence piece, being able to show up with humility in meetings, but also show that I am confident in my next steps. Let's start to look into, if you've identified that potential leader, you now need to start thinking about what actions you're going to take to help develop them regarding being a humble and confident leader. Hayley, what thoughts do you have about this?
I think about something that we've already definitely hit on, a lot of feedback, and asking for that feedback regularly, because feedback is so important because it helps us, as we said, grow. And so by getting that feedback, we're able to identify the areas and actions that can help us get to that next level. So if you are a manager and you want to get to the director level, give me feedback from others. What do I need? What do you see that's missing? Talking to your leader or others that are in that role and asking them, what did you do? A very good conversation and a way to get to know others is asking them about their leadership path and what helped them to get where they are. And you can learn from that and see, and they can help you identify areas that you may need to improve upon. Another is also thinking about how others in the organization view you. You talk about reputation, so how are you viewed by others? What is your reputation in the company? And building upon that and growing that. And then something else that we talked about, when we talked about confidence and courage and building that, imposter syndrome comes up. A lot of times when we start going after something new or something that's, a goal for ourselves, and as we start working towards that ugly little monster of imposter syndrome pops up. And we may start doubting ourselves. Well, can I really do that? Or is it a step I should do? Or, oh, I'm comfortable. I'm really good at what I do. So maybe I should just stay and do this and be the best I can be at that. But guess what? You're selling yourself short. You're not offering others your skills and your abilities. So remember what skills you have. Remember what your strengths are. Remember what got you where you are now and how that can continue to help you grow in your career and how you can benefit yourself in the process and benefit the organization and your team.
I love that, Hayley. I do have a follow-up question I want to ask. Do you see that imposter syndrome just strikes or just appears at the newer levels? Maybe even, is it more generational? So it's individuals who are just showing up into the workplace, or are you seeing it across all generations?
I say across all generations. No, go ahead, David. You go. I've talked about it. You go.
I agree with you, though, Hayley. I see it across all generations. There are folks that are brand new to organizations who are worried about how they're showing up, and there are people that like their jobs and are worried about how they're showing up. So the most successful people do exactly what Hayley suggested, have a self-talk routine. So when Hayley, I think you called it the monster. When the monster appears, they reality check against that monster. Is it really like that? How am I really doing? So that's a good advice for everyone, is get into reality checking. Also recognize if you need to take a pause because your imposter syndrome's out of control. And then let's revisit this, change the environment, do something that's going to change the thought pattern. You can actually train your brain to think differently in situations. You just have to practice a lot.
I absolutely love that. So we've got a couple of tips there for everybody. First off, do self-talk. Have a self-talk routine where you start to catch, before it becomes that imposter monster, you catch it prior through this self-talk routine. However, if it does get a little out of control, start to do some reality checking and put things on a pause if it's overwhelming. Great advice. Thank you. Now, I do see that Philip wrote in the chat, follow through or follow up with one-on-one sessions, and talking back to the leader piece that Hayley was talking about. I think that is another key aspect
Mhm.
to showing up as a confident leader is having that follow through or follow up piece. So thank you for sharing, because I think that's a fabulous tip to share as well. So David, back to the imposter syndrome. Many times individuals that have imposter syndrome do tend to almost be overly humble. I'm curious, do you see that in your clients? And if you do, what ideas do you have to help them overcome that piece?
I don't know if it's overly humble or overly not confident. That they are, it comes down to feeling that you are worthy, that you can believe, that you believe in yourself, that you can do things. So maybe that is humility, or it's a confidence level. I'm not really sure. Absolutely see that, especially I think the pandemic has shaken a lot of people up, and they're really not sure how they're going to balance their lives. What is going on at work? What is the work's practice going to be? So it definitely shows up. Some of the behaviors that I see people do to try to combat that, I actually had a couple clients who would even put a little sticky note on their laptop so people can't see it, with a reminder, I can do it, or something that made sense from them. One person asked his team to actually use a certain word to him to remind him that he is backing away from something, or showing up as or questioning himself. So there's a lot of tips that really you have to make sure that you take at least one small step. It's not a matter of, all right, I'm going to fight it, my monster's going away. It's, what can I do to one step forward to address the imposter syndrome? One step will lead to another, which will lead to another.
I love that, David. Just like that, one step at a time. It's just the ladder. You get to the top, but you got to take one rung at a time, or one step to get there. So that's really good. Love that.
So we've talked about a lot in the last 40 minutes or so. We've talked about how to identify the individual. We've talked about how to be confident and how to help somebody become confident. We provided a variety of different tips and tricks, and almost items that they need to look out for, such as the imposter syndrome, or being overly or lacking confidence, or demonstrating a lack of confidence. Just to wrap up here, I'm curious, David, let me start with you. What would you say are some questions that I may want to do some self-talk with in order to either help myself show up as a better, humble leader, or that I could share with other individuals to be able to help them show up as this humble yet confident leader?
I love that you forming that as, what questions can I ask? With imposter syndrome, what some of the clients are doing to try to question that is this really a reality? So imposter syndrome, I always fail, I'm never going to be able to do this. Is that really reality? It's also, ask the opposite. How many times have I been successful? What do I need to do to be successful? I love Hayley's point earlier. It's also a matter of soliciting feedback, so that in those moments, or even in humility moments, asking others for feedback. How have I been successful before? What have you done? Love the whole informational interview point, asking others what they've done. It's a good way to ask yourself some questions, to your point, and then also some questions you can ask others.
Very powerful. Yes, I definitely agree with that. Hayley, how would you wrap up the entire conversation about helping an individual be able to show up as a confident yet humble leader?
I would say definitely look at your strengths, look at yourself. So like kind of say, get that mirror out, look in the mirror, and what do you see staring back at you? No doubt we want you to see a confident, humble leader, but how do I get there? Remember your strengths. Think about the positive things that you've done throughout your career that really make you feel good. And think about your future. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And many times when we start thinking about the future, or we ask our clients, what's the next step for you? Well, I don't know. Well, or I'm not sure if I could do that. Like David said, ask that question the opposite. What would happen if you did do it? What would happen if you were great? What would happen if this happened or that happened? Not, well, I'm not sure. No, the possibilities are there. They're ready for you to tap into them. It's up to you to open that door. And it is fearful at times as we go through different things and new things and going after new goals and new things in our career. But when you are prepared, when you prepare yourself, when you immerse yourself around others, David talked about earlier, having a mentor, getting a mentor, being a mentor, all these things help build up your confidence. They help you combat imposter syndrome. Being self-aware and aware of others builds your emotional intelligence and help you to grow to really being that genuine, empathetic, selfless leader and being confident, but also being humble. And we can see now after today how those two go hand in hand together. And when you are that way, people will pick up on it and people will follow you and want to be around you and will help you as you go through your leadership journey.
Wonderful advice. Thank you both. Now, there are a few questions here that I just want to pose. And the first one is, sometimes a lack of confidence is a lack of knowledge. And in that case where an individual they don't have the knowledge base to be able to answer the question or to move the project forward, how would you recommend that they answer the types of questions if they don't have that knowledge base, but do so in a way that still demonstrates confidence?
You could always use the phrase, I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Or I'm going to gain that and we'll talk about that in the future. It's also at times calling on others is not necessarily a lack of confidence in yourself. It's actually a way that you could use your team better. So I can always say, wow, Laura, good question. Hayley, can you add some details to that? Or can you help me out on that? I know that you have a strong answer. You don't show up weak. You show up that you're interested. You show up that you know your team. And it's a lot more confident sounding.
Mm-hmm.
That is very powerful. I could see where just hearing how you did that, it didn't sound like you lacked any confidence. It was actually like you wanted to spotlight Hayley because you felt like she was almost this subject matter expert in that scenario. I hope that answers that question. Let's see here. Someone who gives good ideas and something to contribute. This one, but the individual leads off with, or has the tendency to lead off with, an apology that devalues the comments that they're making. And this individual said, caution them about it. Have either of you had clients that tend to do this? They lead off with an apology. Oh, I hate to interrupt. However, if I could share, how would you have them present that instead of the apology step forward process?
Simply put, 2 words, stop it. But to elaborate on that, I do have clients that apologize, or we often hear that phrase, does that make sense? Or am I being clear? And that kind of takes away from kind of what you're saying. It takes the power away from it when you apologize and you ask that question. So in your mind, when you're saying it, believe it. Come across, when you believe it and what you're saying, that's going to come out to others being confident. And then and just drop the apology or reframe it. Maybe it's a question in your head, but instead of a question, make it into a statement. So that way it comes across as you not knowing what you're talking about. And by doing that, you're training your mind too. We didn't get into this a lot, but mindset goes into a lot of this. And as David brought out earlier when he was saying, when you start doing something more and more, it becomes a habit, and then you're able to push that away. So the more you stop doing it, the more you'll get used to just saying what you have to say and not put the I'm sorry at the end or the beginning of it, but just say it.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. There is another question that, what about the ask, don't tell skill? How does leadership use that technique?
I think I'm not exactly sure what Philip means, but when I think of asking, particularly in a coaching situation, a lot of times that is what's going on between the leadership coach and the coachee employee or the coachee mentee. It's really asking questions because you're soliciting the other person's input. You're trying to grow their set of skills in a way that they want to grow. So it's not necessarily as a manager, we frequently will direct somebody, we'll frequently tell somebody, but really going that next step as a leadership coach to ask deep questions. We actually have some additional information on deep questions at Ama La Vida if anybody's curious to learn more.
Thank you. Hayley, any input on the ask, don't tell skill, or did David wrap it up pretty well?
I agree with what David said around that. It was really good point. And the only thing that comes to mind when I think about that is, having those good questions, as you said, those really deep questions that really help you to go deeper and bring out what's there.
Terrific. Out of curiosity, and I'm just curious from your perspectives, when you're in that role, would you recommend that individuals maybe have some pre-planned or canned type questions that they could instantly fall back on so that they don't feel like they're, oh my goodness, I've got to try to come up with this great deep question right here on the spot and nothing's coming to mind? What are your thoughts on that?
Being prepared is always a good thing, but as we're talking about being genuine and authentic. So when you're having a conversation, as you're getting into it, the things are going to come for you. They're going to come up. So you may have an idea in your head of, I want to do this, but as you're in this conversation with this person, something totally different comes up. So you have to be adaptable to that. So I would say if you do find yourself, really sometimes just really stuck in just in a hard place of coming up with questions, maybe having a couple of them formulated that you could include, but really when you're into that conversation and it's going, they're going to come to you as you go and as the conversation progresses.
I totally agree. And if you're really focused on what you're going to say, you're really not listening hard enough to what the other person's saying, because your mind is saying, oh, you need to say that. I want to say that. And just have some preparation, but let it come out organically, I think is really meaningful. Active listening is a really good skill set with this.
Terrific. So what I'm hearing from you is really listening to what the person is saying and developing your questions off of what that individual is saying, instead of having this pre-programmed, okay, next I answer this, or next I ask this. It's so comfortable to be able to have a formula or, the structured process. But I love the way Hayley actually started off this entire presentation. Be comfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's what this is about, because the more we can learn to listen and to use that to develop the questions, the easier it's going to come. And before we know it, that's our new comfort zone. It looks like that is all. I will just ask, are there any other questions? Please feel free to put them into chat. We'd love to be able to see and answer any questions that might have come up through this, or if there's something that you feel like we still need to address. We've got about 10 minutes left. Justice, I just wanted to invite you back as well.
Thank you so much. While we wait just to see if someone else does want to write anything else, I'm going to redrop the link to my calendar in case anyone, now they have a question they'd like to talk about or want to continue a conversation further with any of these three lovely coaches. Additionally, I'm also going to drop, I know they mentioned multiple times some of our other events, so I will drop the link to our overall YouTube page, which is where you can see all of our past events, as well as the link to our Eventbrite, where you can see upcoming events and register for those as well. So those are there. And then, as I did mention, if you mentioned that you did come to us from a webinar, you do get your first session free. So something to consider. But thank you all for the lovely content today. While we wait, does anyone have any last minute thoughts or anything while we see if anyone does have any questions? Otherwise, we can give everyone back a few minutes of their Wednesday.
Exactly.
Floor is yours.
Hayley, any last minute thoughts you'd like to share with the group?
Thank you for coming today. It was a really great conversation. So thank you for joining us and for your participation. It was really great and hearing your thoughts around confidence and growing into a leader. And I, give best wishes to everyone growing in their leadership journey. And again, we're all here. If you need any support, please tap into it and we can help you along your leadership journey.
Thank you, Hayley. David, any last words you would like to share?
Well, I'd love to just say ditto because I think that was so good. We're here to help. So as you go through your leadership journey, whether you're an individual contributor or whether you're leading other people, if we can help your team, yourself, please reach out. We're all here because we love to do it. And this is part of our passion. So any way we can help you be successful, let us know.
Thank you so much, David. I'll just wrap up by saying, and thank you, Philip. You've jumped me to the end, which I always like to ask as we wrap up. What are you going to take away as the next step or some little nugget of information that when you get back to work, you're going to start to implement? Philip did a fabulous job. He said the 2 words for him, active listening. When you're done today, just take a moment, reflect on the conversation that we've had, and write down one nugget of information that you want to try to apply, whether it be showing up more through executive presence, or maybe it's starting to do some of that self-talk so that you can stop the imposter syndrome from taking over. Whatever little nugget that you're taking away, make sure that you implement it within the next 24 to 48 hours. That helps ensure that it starts to become the habit. If you wait until Saturday to think about this, it's probably not going to happen. So do use this as a way to start your own journey on being able to show up as a humble and yet confident leader. I really appreciate everybody's time today. Please do feel free to connect with us, as Justice said. In addition, I know all of us are on LinkedIn and we all enjoy helping to support the future leadership. So please connect with us there as well. Justice, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
That was fantastic. And thank you all for your time today and all the information. Thank you everyone for your time, and we hope to see you at a future event. With that being said, everyone have a great rest of your day and week, and we will all talk soon.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.